There are several reasons why right now is the best time to talk about the V Premium meta. 1. V Clan Collection is releasing in English just 2 days away on the 19th of November. 2. The Japanese Nationals, the Grand Finals, are taking place for the V Premium format this weekend. And 3. We're a mere 3 weeks away from the V Premium stage of the biggest English Vanguard event of the entire year, which was of course going to be Bushiroad Rumble Online, which is a remote fight event. So with that in mind, let's sit down and talk about how did Clan Collection change the meta for V Premium. Today's deck list that we'll be using and taking a look at will be from all of the World Grand Prix qualifiers in Japan, as well as some of the BVFL results, and then at the end I will also show some of the results from my own remote fight tournaments, which mostly have full participation. So in Japan, they had qualifiers for the World Grand Prix, and these were held on various district levels. So the first district after the release of Clan Collection was in Kagawa, Tokushima, Okayama, and Kochi. And here we have the top 4 actually. In 4th, we had Nidaime Ojisan with Agravane. So Agravane basically took some of the new support in the latest Clan Collection, which is of course the Heel Guardians and the Josephus, and found it to be a pretty easy slot in. So of course Josephus has the on-right skill, as well as the when placed on rear skill to Soul Blast 1 and countercharge, and Soul Blast extra times to draw extra cards too. We've seen a lot of Go Paladin lists also run the Cloudwing Eagle, which gains 5k power for every card that is called on any player's turn, despite being a 5k base grade 2. Agravane was already pretty solid in the past as well, but looks like in the current meta for Clan Collection, it has found a pretty nice spot. Just being able to essentially play quite aggressively, superior call a bunch, make extra axle circles with the Percival, and then remake boards and swing with big numbers with the Eagles. You also have more multi-attack potential with the Max Slash Dragon that you find here as well, so expect to see quite a bit of Agravane throughout today's video. In 3rd place was Dorifto Yaro with Spectral Duke, which was another very popular deck in this current meta. We can see the Spectral Duke list actually doesn't contain that many new cards either. It's basically the old Spectral Duke deck with the Percivals, as well as the full Cavalry Dragons, and 4 Sagramors. This is a very heavy grade 3 lineup, with of course the entire Vortimer chain, Dindrains, and the only new card here is the Heel Guardians. So Spectral Duke of course has the potential to just have really strong multi-attack turns, thanks to just having fast axle circle management through the Percival, and then hitting 4 big power restands thanks to Spectral Duke's own skill. The 2nd place Duke list actually looks quite different, because here we see the Josephus being played, as well as the brand new Fallon, which I personally wasn't very impressed with. An on-hit superior call doesn't seem that great, to be honest, and otherwise he's a 14k attacker, which is good for getting over defensives if you can make the right columns for it. And I wonder how much the Fallon and Josephus actually led this deck to an advantage over running the Sagramors that we saw in the previous list. And then in 1st we have Kyamaro-san, who topped with Melody. So Melody is a deck that we've seen quite a bit beforehand. It was definitely not performing as great as Prism in the English scene, but it's still a very strong deck that can just make really strong, powerful columns. And now thanks to the Plon, you can get multiple types of imaginary gifts and build up very strong boards very quickly by just mass soul charging. It's also a very high rarity list, so gotta put some respect on that as well. Then in the beginning of October, we actually had the Vanguard Masters Cup VMC 2020 Winter Finals. So these were delayed all the way from winter 2020 until October of this year, which is pretty insane. Here we had quite a variety of lists, and while there are some repeating ones, I will not feature ones where things are card for card repeat, but if there is any difference in card choices, I do want to highlight it. So in 4th place we had Rizu, who also brought Spectral Duke. Here the difference that we see is that grade 1 promo that we've had in English for quite a while, which is the Krolls, who when he boosts can let you Soul Blast 1, and then depending on how much you call this turn, you can do the following. If you call 2 or more, he gets plus 5k, and if you called 4 or more, then your opponent cannot intercept. So I'm assuming this was teched for other Axel matchups where you basically just want to like not let them dunk all their front row rears as intercepts, or just as a strong booster. In 3rd place we had the pretty familiar duo with Luards. Now Luard is a deck that has been quite notoriously strong for almost as long as it has existed in the V Premium format, and this list is quite interesting because he's running the 2 Apocalypse Bats, which of course lets you have the maximum number of attacks in this deck. He's also running 2 Swells, 4 Branwins, so of course Swells is an important combo piece, 2 of the Nightmare Painters to fill up your soul and actually execute the Apocalypse Bat game plan, 2 Karens because they can be searched with the Leofall, 1 Dekron that basically lets you intercept with your grade 1, so that's also like, you know, the anti-intercept cards are pretty strong strong against Luard because of that. One Cool Bow, which is an interesting card that lets you revive, you know, your 5,000 power normal units from your drop zone. So in this case, this would be the Abyssal Owl. Of course, the only new card in this deck is essentially just the Heal Guardians, which of course let you survive against more aggressive decks much better. In second place was Sora-san, who actually topped with Gavriel. So Gavriel is definitely a very strong deck and has changed quite a lot going into this set. You'll notice that it's no longer 16 critical triggers, but rather we do put in the Heal Guardians, because with the addition of the Eophiel, the new grade 1, you don't have to rely so much on not healing or on the no-seal engine, because you can use her skill when she's placed on Rearguard Circle to bind herself and give yourself a damage for that turn, and only at the end of the turn will that damage be healed out, or rather return to your hand. So that's really nice because you can basically spam her effect and boost yourself up in damage so you can use the Hamiel skill more reliably and not worry about healing out, because every deck wants to run Heal Guardians because they are that good. Sariel is an amazing card as well because she lets you essentially tutor for anything you want. You're missing a Hamiel, go and tutor it out. You're missing a Gavriel that you can't ride, go tutor it out. You need a Yafkiel to start, you know, bringing things out of your damage zone to your hand, tutor it out. And of course, the new Eophiel you can also tutor out. It's just an amazing card overall, and these two new cards have really pushed Gavriel to the top in my opinion, and made the deck feel a lot more fun to play. I've been testing this list quite a lot myself, and I can say that it definitely feels like a top tournament contender if you're also planning to bring this into BRO 2021. And in first place, we had Hiro-san, who also brought Spectral Duke. The list here is mostly the same and what you would expect, except for the one grade 2, which is the Langley, which says depending on how many rearguards you've called this turn, he does the following. If you've called 2 or more, your opponent cannot intercept, and if you've called 4 or more, he gets plus 5k. So it's the same as the grade 1 promo, but as a grade 2 basically, and the conditions are reversed. Then we had the WGP Hokkaido qualifiers. So here in fourth, we had Tsubasa-san with Thavas. Now, of course, keep in mind that we do not have Pursuit Assault in English yet, while Japan does. For those that need a reminder, Pursuit Assault says he gets plus 5k for every one of your additional rearguard circles, and once per turn, you can soul boss 1 and rest 2 rearguards to draw a card. So of course, this is meant to be set up for Thavas, whose skill requires you to have 3 or more resting rearguards at the beginning of your battle phase in order to ride the Lambros from your deck. And so not having this card does hurt quite a lot, so do keep that in mind. This doesn't even run Heal Guardians, actually, interestingly enough. It still runs the original heal triggers, which might mean that for Axel decks, they still want to just like hold on to the 20k shield value rather than prioritizing the Heal Guardian effect. Then in third place, the Luard list was almost identical to the one seen in the VMC. And then the second place list was another melody list that was very similar to what we saw before. But in first place, we once again have Aggravanes. This one is by Kyonra. So this Aggravane list is pretty interesting. Again, we're seeing quite a few patterns of like, you know, Percivals with the 2 Edmunds, quite high counts of the full cavalry as well, which is quite interesting to see. And then 4 of this grade 1 from VEB10, which says when it boosts, if your Vanguard is Aggravane, depending on how many rearguards you've called this turn, do the following. If you called 2 or more, the boosted unit gets plus 3k, and if you called 4 or more, you also give him plus 5k. So he essentially lets you make even better rearguard columns in order to strengthen your attacks overall. So that's an interesting choice that we haven't seen too much of in Aggravane lists until now. Up next, we have the WGP Tokyo qualifiers. And of course, because the Tokyo greater region is the largest in Japan, this was broken up into 3 different blocks. We're going to have the A block results, B block results, and C block results. We're going to start with the C block, and in 4th place, we actually had Vanquisher by Mr. Happy. So this Vanquisher list we can see isn't running Heal Guardians either. It's actually no new cards whatsoever inside of it, running 3 regular Vanquishers, 4 full Brontos, just to maximize the amount of rerides you can have per game. 3 of the Baruka, which is a promo that some people run, some people play the Voltec Shred instead. Only 2 Chatras, which is very surprising, and prioritizing 4 Rising Phoenix, which a lot of people don't even play at high copies at all because of its kind of awkward timing in this deck. And of course, 2 of the Book Order that lets you give 3 units plus 10k while drawing 3 cards. In 3rd place, we had Moto Gorira-san running the Cross. So you can see the Cross here is running the Heal Guardians, which again, we've said are very important, and 12 critical triggers. It's kind of like Gavriel in this sense, where it wants to still run a heavy amount of criticals, but cannot give up the Heal Guardians because of how good they are in surviving in certain matchups. Generally speaking, the lineup is quite similar to what we expect of the Cross. The Striking is quite interesting. It cannot attack when it's on the Vanguard circle, but then when a grade 3 rides over it, you can count on +1 to draw 1 and give your Vanguard plus 5k plus 1 crit. This is probably going to be very nostalgic for the 0 players right now. So if you're a 0 player and you want to play the Cross in the TCG, then this is probably as close to feeling like 0 as it's going to get. Second place was another melody list that we're quite used to seeing, so we're going to skip on that one, but the first place was Messiahs. Now this Messiah list was pretty interesting in that it is actually running 2 Harmonics Messiah, which we do see sometimes as just an alternative grade 3 that you're right. Alter Ego Messiah is a great card, and being able to revive something from your drop as a locked card, and then be able to unlock everything when it attacks and get plus, give everything plus 10k. But the Harmonics Messiah works quite differently in that it lets you deck search for things to call as locked, and after it's done attacking, as long as you have a grade 3 in your soul, you can counterblast 1 and discard 1 to unlock any player's rear guards, and then draw for the same amount that you unlocked, and then give 2 front row rear guards plus 15k. So in the late game, it is really nice to go into the Harmonics because it lets you tutor for certain things and also draw more cards so you have the sustain to survive. Let's not forget about the Language Jard, which is finally coming out for us this Friday, which lets you on a ride, choose a card from your hand and call it down as a locked card, and then draw 1, which lets you set up the Volco on turn 1, which is insanely strong, while on rear guard circle being able to counterblast 1 and unlock 1 of your locked rear guards. And if you did Soul Charge 1, thus maybe even high rolling into the Harmonics Messiah if you manage to Soul Charge a grade 3. I do question the Burst Monk though, because I feel like the Burst Monk isn't as useful as it used to be, and I would rather prioritize maximizing on count of the Lady Fencer, the Gusterer, and probably the Lady Battler for those nice numbers. Of course, this deck is also running 4 of the Heal Guardians, because they're very important for these kind of more mid-rangey decks that need to survive the early game against the more aggressive decks, because for this deck's draw engine, it basically turns on once you actually reach your grade 3 turn, right? So whether that's drawing from the Van Manen or plussing from the Gusterer or actually finding the Harmonics Messiah for turn 4. In the B block, the 4th place was the same Gavriel list that we took a look at earlier. The 3rd place was actually Rizu with Luard, who we saw from the Vanguard Masters Cup, so you can see he's running basically the same list as before. I think he's just running 3 of the drag drivers, which is quite surprising because a lot of people do run 4 just because of how easily you can run out of him and you have to keep putting him back to your deck and like managing your resources. So it's an interesting choice, but he still runs the Apocalypse Bat game plan overall. And then this was very surprising to me because in the 2nd place, Ryu-san brought Anj. Now Anj is actually the first ever Bermuda deck that I ever built. It's this specific V Premium Anj, and I'm quite surprised by the choice to run 4 of the Tirua, not running any of the other grade 3 that lets you restand if you discard 3 copies of itself. Because I've seen many lists run like 2 Tiruas or 1 Tirua and then running basically like 4 copies of that card. And there's also quite a few new additions here as well, and even the heal counts are split between 2 of the 20k heals and 2 of the heal guardians, which is also quite surprising. This also runs the Clastina, which is the promo that I think is being reprinted in a clan collection, if not this one then the next one, which is when placed on Vanguard Circle as a grade 2, counterblast 1, soulblast 1, look at the top 3 cards of your deck, add 1 to hand, put 1 to the bottom of your deck, and call 1 to the rearguard circle, which is a really good effect for just riding something. We also see the Meruniru, who says when placed on Vanguard rearguard circle, you can put a normal unit from your hand to the bottom of your deck and draw 1, kind of like die prop, and once returned to rearguard circle, if during your battle phase your grade 3 unit is placed, grade 3 or higher unit, sorry, if she's in the back row, for that turn you can give your Vanguard plus 10k power. And this works directly with Anj because Anj will usually superior call a Tirua from the deck that will then multi-attack on like a force marker, and you'll give her triggers and stuff to get that multi-attack going. So you can basically use the Meruniru to basically power up your Anj, who's actually swinging for a very small power number, usually like 23 or something, because you want to be putting your force markers on your rearguard circles where the multi-attacks are actually happening. So Meruniru definitely helps the Anj deck a lot, and so I'm quite excited because this is one of the decks that I do actually play myself for Bermudas. And then in first place there was another Gavriel list, once again basically identical to what we've been seeing so far. 12 critical, 4 heal guardian, 4 Sariel, 4 Iophiel, 1 of the Bellyful Meds Angel, and everything else is just about the same. Then in the A block we have 4th place Bernard, who also brought Messiahs. So here we can see the Messiah list is quite similar, running 3 Gusters, 3 Lady Fencers, 3 Burst Monks, just a lot of 3-ofs, and the 2 Harmonics Messiahs, basically identical to the previous list. And then in first place was another Melody list by Ryo-san, who is quite a familiar name once again. Not the same Ryo from the VMC, but the Ryo that won the GP Akiba a couple years ago. So once again bringing Melody and taking it all the way. And the final of the WGP qualifiers was for the district of Ehime, Hiroshima, Yamaguchi, Tottori, and Shimane. In fourth place we had another Vanquisher list. This one was also quite interesting because here again we don't see any Heal Guardians. Instead he's actually running 2 Choos, which is quite an interesting choice, and 4 Rising Phoenixes, but the 2 Choos, we definitely haven't seen Cho be played as much in recent times. Running 7 draw triggers as well, which is a very draw heavy lineup here. Third place was another Spectral Duke list, but in second place I really want to feature this Majesty Lord Blaster list from Mr. D-Flag, or D-Frag. That is actually an anime name, I believe. So this is a Majesty Lord Blaster with the Jewel Knight engine that doesn't run the grade 2 Jewel Knight, but runs the Ashley as well as the Morvidus, and running 2 of the Sanctuary Guard Dragon as well, together with the grade 1 and 2 So the Wixtan and the Bazar of the Sanctuary Guard engine. So this is really interesting because it's not like what you see very often, like also running the Knight Squire Allen in order to get those multi-calls. The Wingo Brave I definitely do agree with because this lets you get quite a lot of deck searching going. 4 Livaros as well to make sure you search out your Blaster Blade and Blaster Dark for the MLB skill. And it's just in general a very techie list that lets you go through your deck very quickly, and then you can, I assume, farm up your force markers with the Majesty Lord Blaster and then use Sanctuary Guard Dragon as a finisher with that very powerful Vanguard restand. And in first place we had Mr. Manzoku, who once again brought the tried and tested Gavriel list that we've seen before with the 3 Sariels and 2 of the Bellyful Meds. And you can really see that Gavriel has been a very strong contender here even while still running the Heal Guardians, and it's a very fun deck, trust me. I don't know if this means much, but at least to me it feels a little bit less degen than it used to in the past. So that is it for the results from the WGPs. Now we're going to quickly take a look at the BVFL results. So there were 2 BVFLs over the last couple of weeks that had V Premium in its lineup. So the first one was the Hon Atsugi with 25 players, and some parts of this top 4 you expect and some you don't. So in 4th place we had Tsukigami's Melody, but in 3rd place we finally had Astral Poets actually show up. I'm imagining that for Astral Poets, potentially one of the big losses might have been just Heal Guardians being introduced and being able to minus the critical of the Valkyrion, thus being able to kind of protect yourself against it a little bit better. But interestingly enough, you would expect that logic to apply to Hamiel in Gavriel as well, but we really saw a lot less Astral Poet representation over this past month and a half. Now in 2nd place, this one was really interesting. This was Pico, who brought Mystery Flare Turbo. So Mystery Flare Turbo is a very interesting deck, right? Mystery Flare, the way it works in the TCG is that when you ride it, depending on the total grades of your bind zone, so all the cards in your bind zone, like the grades added up, you do the following. If it's 3 or more, he gets an extra drive. If it's 7 or more, you get an extra crit. If it's 13 or more, you choose 6 units, give them plus 10k. And if it's 19 or more, at the end of this turn, you discard your entire hand and you gain 1 more turn. But during that turn, you cannot ride. So essentially what this deck wants to do is use a lot of the cards that it has at its disposal to reach that extra turn. It's even called Extra Turn Gear Chronicle for a reason. So Kalibum is a new grade 2 that basically binds itself after it attacks, which is a grade 2 in your bind zone. There's a very important grade 0 that is run at 4 of here, which says in the bind zone, this counts as a grade 4, and at the end of the battle that it boosted on Rearguard Circle, you can bind itself to draw a card. So it's a 10k shield slash, you know, just a 5k booster that goes to the bind zone and lets you draw a card to compensate, but it is a promo that we don't have in English yet, so please Bushiroad step on it. And then we have the Renovate Winged Dragon as well, which is a once per turn Soul Blast 2 and bind 2 rear guards. So look at the top 3 cards of your deck and call 2 of them to rearguard circles and bind 1 of them. So you can basically just target 2 of the doggos, that's grade 8 in your bind zone, and then bind something else from your top 3. So very quickly you can actually reach that grade 19 plus with all of these effects combined. I really hope we get the doggo promo soon because this deck looks really fun to play. And then in first place we actually had Ghosties, so this is a list that's been popping up in V Premium quite a lot, but this one is running 12 draw triggers, which is incredible to me. It's a pure Ghosty list, so you basically just want to chain with a Beatrice from Skull Dragon into Jessie, and then either into the Damien or into the Pat, and then you end off with a Chappie, which will be a 20k attacker slash 25k intercept, which is incredibly strong. And of course this one doesn't run Heal Guardians because you prefer to run the Rick, which is a ghosty heal trigger. And then the other BVFL that we had, which had V Premium within its formats, was the Kashiwa one. This one I believe had 31 players, and keep in mind I believe the cap for these tournaments is like 30 something, so they do hit almost full house every time. So here we have a couple familiar faces, but also some new faces in the top 4. Kurokuma brought Altmile to the top 4, running a lot of one-ofs, which I understand because you can search for any grade 2s with the Altmile, but even then this feels pretty crazy, right? For the Jewel Knights, he's not running Ashley and instead just running 1 of the grade 2 and 4 of the Morvidus, which makes sense, 4 of the Edis, which lets you essentially put an Altmile from your rearguard circle into your soul, thus letting you use the Airmile skill immediately. There's also the Raboru, which lets you basically recycle one of your non-grade 2 rearguards to the bottom of the deck to draw 2 and then call one from hand, and also giving a kind of sort of resist. But still, I'm surprised by all the 1-ups, and especially that Blaster Blade feels like it's a little bit of a stretch here. So it's an interesting mobile list, but definitely some question marks here and there. In third place, there was the Messiah list, which was identical to what we've been seeing so far, even in ratios. Then in second place, we had Ansara-san, which is actually a good friend of mine. He's a very, very great community member in Japan. And so it's very cool to see like a personal friend of mine make it to the tops here, and he came second with Chronojet. And look at this dripped out Chronojet. That Chronojet you see here, that is the BRO 2021 winners promo for the V Premium format, so we actually do have it in English too. This Chronojet list is quite interesting, where he only runs 2 of the Kalibooms and none of the Chronos commands, which I feel like Kaliboom is a really good card to run as a 4 of, and Chronos command you can definitely make space for 1 copy. The GG is also played here, which I think is a fine card, but you already have the Chronotooth Tigar as well as the Ribble as your kind of like on discard calls. And then he runs this interesting grade 2, which says when you intercept with it, you can discard 1, and for that battle choose one of your units and it cannot be hit. So it's kind of like a perfect guard that intercepts, which is kind of interesting. I think a lot of people slept on this card, so it might take some people by surprise. But overall, this is looking like a very strong Gear Chronicle list, and I'm very happy to see my friend come out here on the second place. And then in first place, we had Mr. Noel with the tried and tested Spectral Duke list that we've been seeing time and time again. And that just about covers it for all the tops that we've had since the end of September. So since the Clan Collection came out, so you can see which decks actually made an impact. Overall, not too many of the new decks from Clan Collection are coming out on top as often, but rather we see a lot of random techs and decks like Gabriel being super powered up by the new grade 1 and 2. And of course, in English for Messiahs, this will be a life-saving set, despite the focus being on Chaos Breaker in this set. Of course, Heal Guardians are found literally everywhere too. Now here's a quick pie chart so you can actually see how things look. So of course, the main portions of the pie are taken up by Spectral Duke, Gavriel, and Melody, with Messiah and Luard being pretty prominent as well. We've seen quite a bit of Agravain and Vanquisher as well, so I think those decks should not be slept on either. But overall, there's just quite a lot of decks from the past that got some new support with the new cards here. And in general, the V Premium format has found a lot of new interest after the Clan Collections came out, and I think that that has definitely boosted the player base or just the participation rate in these tournaments as well. I really can't wait to see what's going to come out on top at the WGP finals this weekend, but I think when we look at the top slices of this pie, we can definitely have some expectations of what we're going to see on the live stream. And finally, I will also quickly mention my own tournament's results. So we actually have another FRF V Premium tournament this weekend, but the one from last month, which was in the BRO format. The top 8 looked like this. You can find the deck list in the description below. I'll add a tweet where you can look at the replies to see all the deck lists. But Wildbird came in first with Shiranui, which actually looked very, very strong throughout the top 8 games. So I was actually watching them the entire time. Vanilla Circus showing off to the world that the Bunny Beast Tamer is very strong, and it really is. Like, you can do a lot of multi-attacks, a lot of drive checks in one turn as well because of how the bunnies work. And overall, I think the new Pale Moon build should definitely be tested, and I think it could easily take someone by surprise if they don't test against it. And of course, Ashwin representing Dimension Police everywhere he goes, topping with Daikaiser. It's also nice to see Night Rose still up there, even after Ghosties have gotten some very amazing support in the clan selection. So overall, it's a very interesting top 8, and I can't wait to see what the players will bring this weekend as well. And that just about does it. So this was your kind of meta analysis for the V Premium format. I'll be doing another one for Premium, probably the week of the BRO 2021 for Premium. So this is actually in 2 weeks, which is crazy to think about. So you can look forward to that as well if you want some Premium result analysis. But anyway, that's gonna be it for this video. If you guys liked it, please do give it a like. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel because it does help a lot. You can also check out my socials, my Twitch, and my Discord channel, all in the description below. But anyway, that's gonna be it for me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.